I remember the exact moment I realized I'd been betrayed. It wasn't when the HR director called me into her office on that rainy Tuesday afternoon. It wasn't even when she slid the termination papers across her polished mahogany desk. No, it was 3 hours earlier when I caught Thomas smirking at me from across the conference room during our weekly team meeting. That subtle, satisfied smile told me everything I needed to know. After 5 years of working side by side, my work friend had orchestrated my downfall to claim my position as his own. I'm Abigail Morales, and this is the story of how I lost everything I'd worked for and then watched as justice unfolded in the most satisfying way possible. When I joined Westwood Financial as a junior analyst, I was determined to prove myself. The finance world isn't exactly welcoming to women, especially those without Ivy League connections or family ties to the industry. But I had something better, an unmatched work ethic and analytical skills that made the numbers sing. My first year was brutal. 14-hour days were standard. While others went out for happy hours, I stayed behind, poring over market trends and building models that could predict investment outcomes with remarkable accuracy. The senior analyst barely acknowledged my existence, except for Robert, my supervisor, who recognized something in me that others overlooked. You have an instinct for pattern recognition, he told me during my first performance review. But more importantly, you understand that every number represents real people making real decisions. That's rare in this business. Under Robert's mentorship, I began to thrive. My forecast caught the attention of the executive team when they outperformed those of analysts with twice my experience. By my second year, I was handling key accounts independently. By my third, I was training new team members. 4 promotions in 5 years put me on the fast track. By 32, I was heading the investment research department, managing a team of 8 analysts and reporting directly to the executive board. My quarterly forecasts had gained a reputation for accuracy that brought in major clients. I was living my dream. The corner office with a view of the city skyline felt like validation for every sacrifice I'd made. The framed award for Financial Analyst of the Year on my wall represented countless weekends forfeited and personal milestones celebrated alone. But standing in front of my team, watching them implement strategies that would secure our clients' financial futures, that made everything worthwhile. When Robert left to become CFO at a tech startup, he recommended me as his replacement. You've surpassed me already, he said at his going away party. The department needs your vision now. With his endorsement, I stepped into the role that had once seemed impossibly out of reach. The arrival. Thomas joined the company 3 years after me. He had the pedigree I lacked: Harvard MBA, family connections, the confident swagger of someone who'd never been told no in his life. We were assigned to work together on an emerging markets project, and surprisingly, we clicked professionally. His theoretical knowledge complemented my practical approach. We became what I naively thought was a solid team. We're going to revolutionize this department, he'd say during our late night strategy sessions. They won't know what hit them. I didn't realize the they he was referring to would eventually include me. Thomas had a natural charisma that I sometimes envied. He could walk into a room and immediately command attention, making each person feel like the most important individual there. Clients loved his polished presentations and easy confidence. Where I was methodical and precise, Thomas was bold and visionary, or so he seemed. His background read like a finance industry fairy tale: prestigious boarding school, Harvard undergraduate followed by their MBA program, internships at Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley. But something about his resume always felt slightly embellished to me. Achievements that seemed too perfect, recommendations that felt too effusive. I dismissed these concerns as my own insecurity, a mistake I would come to regret deeply. We developed a comfortable working rhythm. I would build the analytical foundation of our projects, and Thomas would craft the narrative that made our recommendations compelling. Clients responded well to this approach, and our success brought attention from senior management. You found the perfect complement to your style, Zachary, our new department head, commented after a particularly successful presentation. Thomas brings the flash, and you bring the substance. At the time, I took it as a compliment. Later, I would recognize it as the beginning of a dangerous narrative, one that positioned me as the reliable background player and Thomas as the star. The first red flag appeared when Thomas began scheduling meetings with Zachary without including me. When I asked about it casually, he brushed it off. Just going over some personal development goals, he said. Nothing project related. Then came the subtle digs during team meetings. Abigail's report is good, but I think we could be more aggressive with these projections, he'd say. Or, that strategy is a bit outdated. I've been researching newer approaches. I dismissed these comments as healthy professional discourse. In hindsight, he was systematically undermining my authority while positioning himself as the innovative thinker in the room. Looking back, I should have recognized his patterns sooner. Thomas had a way of taking credit for successful ideas while distancing himself from anything that underperformed. During our collaborative projects, he'd contribute just enough to claim partial ownership, but never enough to bear the full responsibility if things went south. His strategically timed questions during presentations subtly shifted the focus to areas where he could showcase his expertise, leaving me to fumble through responses on topics we hadn't prepared for. There was also the matter of his selective memory. Ideas we had discussed together would suddenly become his breakthrough insight when presented to management. When I would point this out, he'd laugh it off with a charming, "Great minds think alike, right?" Making me seem petty for even mentioning it. As Thomas grew more confident in his position, his tactics became more overt. He began holding informal strategy sessions with junior team members without inviting me. When I walked into the break room during one of these impromptu meetings, conversations would abruptly halt, only to resume with forced casualness after an awkward pause. "Just catching up on the weekend," Thomas would say with that practiced smile that never quite reached his eyes. Nothing important. But I'd catch glimpses of spreadsheets being hastily minimized or notes being flipped over. My team was becoming his team right under my nose. The weekend before my termination, I was working late, finalizing a presentation for our biggest client. The office was deserted, or so I thought. As I walked past the conference room, I heard Thomas's voice, followed by Zachary's hearty laugh. Through the cracked door, I caught fragments of their conversation. "She's too conservative, holding the department back. Clients want fresh perspectives." I froze, my stomach dropping like a stone. They were talking about me. I should have confronted them right then, but shock kept me rooted in place. Instead, I quietly gathered my belongings and left, telling myself I was overreacting, that they couldn't possibly be plotting against me. That night, I barely slept. I replayed every interaction, every meeting, every subtle comment from the past few months. Had I missed something? Was I truly becoming obsolete in my own department? Self doubt crept in like a poison, making me question skills and decisions that had previously brought me confidence and success. The execution. Monday came and Thomas was unusually attentive. "You look tired, Abigail. Let me handle the client meeting today," he offered, his concern so convincing I almost believed it was genuine. I declined, of course. The Henderson account was mine. I'd nurtured that relationship from the beginning. As I gathered my materials for the presentation, I noticed a slight discrepancy in the projection numbers, something I hadn't seen in my review the night before. Had I made an error? I quickly corrected it, brushing it off as fatigue-induced oversight. During the presentation, I noticed Zachary watching me with an evaluative stare, rather than his usual supportive nod. Thomas sat beside him, occasionally whispering comments that made our boss frown. The Henderson team seemed engaged, asking thoughtful questions, but there was an undercurrent of tension I couldn't quite identify. After the clients left, Zachary barely acknowledged my presence. "Thomas, let's discuss some follow-up strategies in my office," he said, walking away without a glance in my direction. Left alone in the conference room, I felt a chill of isolation. The department I had built, the team I had mentored, the relationships I had cultivated, everything suddenly felt precarious. I returned to my office to find a calendar invite from HR scheduled for the following morning. No agenda, no context, just a mandatory meeting request. That night, I received an email requesting my presence in HR the following morning. No explanation. No hint of what was to come. I spent hours reviewing my recent work, searching for mistakes or oversights that could have triggered such a meeting. Everything seemed in order, which only intensified my anxiety. Performance issues and client complaints, the HR director stated flatly, sliding the termination papers toward me. We've documented several instances where your projections were overly cautious, potentially costing clients significant returns. What clients? I demanded, my voice steadier than I felt. I've maintained a 97% satisfaction rating. She shuffled through her papers, avoiding my eyes. I'm not at liberty to discuss specific feedback. The decision has been made at the executive level. I deserve specifics, I insisted, my heart pounding. 5 years of exemplary performance reviews don't suddenly dissolve into termination without clear cause. The HR director sighed, revealing a hint of discomfort with her task. The Henderson team expressed concerns about your reluctance to explore more innovative investment strategies. They've apparently been discussing this with Thomas and Zachary for weeks. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Henderson, my client, my relationship, had been meeting with Thomas behind my back? Or had Thomas fabricated these concerns to serve his agenda? I want to speak with Zachary, I said, fighting to keep my voice level. He's unavailable today, she replied too quickly, and this decision is final. I need your signature acknowledging receipt of these documents. As security escorted me to clear out my desk, I saw Thomas watching from Zachary's office, that same smirk playing on his lips. In that moment, I knew. He hadn't just anticipated my downfall, he'd engineered it. I walked out of the building with a cardboard box containing 5 years of my professional life, rain soaking through my blazer, my mind numb with disbelief. The following weeks were a blur of rejection. Every job application met with silence or polite declination. My industry was small, and somehow word had spread that I was difficult, inflexible, out of touch with current market trends. Thomas's poisonous narrative had extended beyond Westwood. I was burning through savings, desperately networking, trying to understand how my reputation had crumbled so quickly. Former colleagues stopped returning my calls. Industry contacts who had once eagerly sought my insights now claimed to be too busy for coffee. The isolation was almost as devastating as the financial strain. My sister, Elena, was my lifeline during this period. This doesn't make sense, she insisted over dinner at her apartment, where I'd begun spending most evenings to avoid my increasingly depressing condo. You were their star analyst. Something isn't adding up. Thomas played the long game, I admitted, finally voicing what I'd come to understand. He spent nearly 2 years positioning himself as the innovator while casting me as the cautious dinosaur resistant to change. By the time I realized what was happening, the narrative was already established. There has to be more to it, Elena pressed. Nobody gets fired for being cautious in financial analysis. That's literally the job. She was right, of course. Caution and risk assessment were fundamental to my role. What had Thomas offered that made my approach suddenly seem inadequate? Then came the call that changed everything. Abigail, it's Heather from accounting at Westwood. I'm not supposed to be telling you this, but something's not right with the Henderson account numbers Thomas presented last week. They don't match your original projections, but he's claiming they're based on your models. My heart raced. What do you mean? He's altered historical data to make your strategies look flawed, and his corrections appear brilliant. I'm talking about deliberate manipulation of financial records. Do you have proof? I asked, hardly daring to hope. I've copied some files to my personal drive. Meet me after work? That evening, in a quiet cafe miles from the office, Heather passed me a flash drive. I could lose my job for this, she whispered. But what he's doing isn't just unethical, it's illegal. I thanked her, wondering what had prompted her to take such a risk. You helped me when I first started, she explained. When everyone else treated me like I was invisible, you made sure I got credit for my work. Some of us haven't forgotten that. Heather hesitated, then continued. There's something else you should know. Thomas has been spending a lot of time with Zachary talking about company restructuring. Word around the office is that they're planning to dissolve your former department and redistribute the analysts under different leadership, with Thomas heading the most profitable accounts, of course. So it wasn't just about taking my job, I murmured. He's dismantling everything I built. Pretty much, Heather confirmed. And the board is eating it up because his projected returns are astronomical. Unrealistic, if you ask me, but I'm just an accountant. As we parted, Heather gripped my arm. Be careful, Abigail. Thomas has friends in high places. If he finds out about this, she left the warning unspoken. At home, I reviewed the files, my hands trembling with fury. Thomas hadn't just sabotaged me. He'd manipulated financial data from multiple clients, fabricated complaints, and forged signatures on documents. His brilliant, fresh perspective was nothing more than creative fiction designed to make him look like a savior while setting me up as the scapegoat. But the most damning evidence wasn't about me at all. Buried in the Henderson account files was proof that Thomas had been sharing confidential client information with his friend at a competing firm, a federal offense in our industry. The pieces suddenly fell into place. Thomas's innovative strategies were performing remarkably well because he had insider information from competitor clients. He wasn't brilliant, he was criminal. I sat back, my mind racing. I could destroy him with this information, but I needed to be strategic. Thomas was charming and well connected. A direct accusation might backfire. I needed indisputable proof and the right audience. I spent the next 3 days meticulously organizing the evidence, creating a timeline of Thomas's manipulations. I cross-referenced everything with public records and my own archived emails. The picture that emerged was damning. A systematic campaign to undermine me while compromising client interests for personal gain. During this investigation, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. Thomas had been subtly altering my analysis models for months before my termination. Small changes to formulas and assumptions that would only show significant impacts over time. When these altered models inevitably produced poorer results, he was positioned perfectly to correct my supposed mistakes. It was devious and calculated, the work of someone who had planned my professional execution with meticulous care. Elena, who had become my unofficial strategist, helped me organize the evidence. You need to approach this like a prosecutor building a case, as she advised. No emotional accusations, just facts and data. The problem is getting an audience, I replied. Zachary won't take my calls, and the board won't meet with a disgruntled former employee. Then you need a moment when they're all together, Elena said thoughtfully. A situation where they can't dismiss you without hearing you out. Then I received an unexpected text from my former assistant, Jordan. Big client meeting tomorrow. Entire board plus Henderson team. Thomas presenting his innovative strategy. Thought you should know. Perfect timing. The board, the client, and Thomas's moment of triumph, all in one room. It's risky, Elena warned when I told her my plan. If they shut you down before you can present your evidence, then I go to the SEC directly, I finished. But I'd rather give Westwood the chance to correct this internally first. Why? Elena asked, genuinely curious. They didn't give you any chances. I considered this. Because unlike Thomas, I actually care about the clients and the other employees. An SEC investigation would damage more than just Thomas and Zachary. Your conscience is going to be your downfall someday? My sister sighed. But I admire it. That night, I rehearsed my presentation until I could deliver it calmly and factually, without the anger and hurt that still churned beneath the surface. This wasn't about vengeance, it was about justice and protecting the integrity of the work I had dedicated years to building. I arrived at Westwood Financial the next morning dressed in my sharpest suit, projecting confidence I didn't entirely feel. The receptionist, surprised to see me, buzzed security. I have information the board needs to see immediately regarding the Henderson account, I stated calmly. It involves potential fraud and SEC violations. Those magic words, SEC violations, sent the security guard scrambling to call the executive floor. Within minutes, a nervous-looking board secretary escorted me up. As the elevator doors opened, I saw Thomas through the glass walls of the conference room, gesturing animatedly to the gathered executives and Henderson representatives. His presentation was in full swing, his confident smile radiating the certainty of someone who believed his victory was complete and unchallenged. The board secretary knocked tentatively. I'm sorry to interrupt, but Abigail Morales is here with urgent information regarding the Henderson account. She's alleging potential fraud. The room fell silent. Thomas froze mid-gesture, his face draining of color as he saw me standing in the doorway. For a split second, raw panic flashed across his features before he composed himself. This is highly inappropriate, Zachary sputtered, rising from his seat. Ms. Morales no longer works here. I think you'll want to hear what I have to say, I interrupted, connecting my laptop to the presentation system without waiting for permission, especially since it concerns deliberate manipulation of financial data and unauthorized sharing of client information with competitors. The Henderson CEO leaned forward. Go on. For the next 20 minutes, I methodically laid out the evidence, the altered projections, the fabricated client complaints, the forged documents, all traced back to Thomas's computer. I showed them how my original models had been manipulated to show poor performance and how Thomas had taken credit for strategies I had developed. These discrepancies aren't errors, I explained, highlighting a particularly egregious example. The formulas were deliberately changed to produce specific outcomes, outcomes that made my conservative approach appear inadequate compared to Thomas's supposedly superior insights. I moved through the evidence systematically, keeping my voice steady, even as I revealed how Thomas had manufactured complaints from clients who, according to email records, had actually praised my work. I showed documentation of meetings that never occurred, consensus that was never reached, and approvals that were never given. Then came the bombshell, emails showing Thomas sharing Henderson's confidential investment strategies with his friend at a competing firm in exchange for inside information about other potential clients. This isn't just about corporate politics or who gets which office, and I concluded. This is about the systematic compromise of client confidentiality and the manipulation of financial data, actions that violate not just company policy, but federal securities law. As I spoke, I watched Thomas's confident facade crumble. He attempted to interrupt several times, but each denial withered under the weight of the documented evidence. These are serious allegations, the board chairman said when I finished, his voice grave. They're more than allegations, I replied, handing him a USB drive. Every document, email, and altered file is here, with metadata intact. I've also sent copies to my attorney and, given the nature of the securities violations, to the SEC. The room erupted in chaos. The Henderson team huddled together, whispering furiously. Board members exchanged alarmed glances. Zachary stared at Thomas with undisguised horror. Thomas, desperate now, tried one last defense. This is absurd. She's just bitter about being terminated. She probably fabricated all of this. The metadata doesn't lie, I cut in. Every alteration is time-stamped and linked to your login credentials. The emails came from your company account. And I'm certainly not the one who had 3 meetings with Ryan Matthews from Bradford Financial last month, sharing proprietary Henderson data. Thomas's face contorted with rage and fear. Zachary knew about my approach. The board approved my strategies. It was a desperate attempt to spread the blame, but it only implicated him further. The Henderson CEO stood up, face flushed with anger. We're pulling all our business immediately. Expect to hear from our legal team. He gestured to his team, and they filed out of the room without another word. In the silence that followed, I calmly packed up my laptop. I believe you all have some decisions to make. I'll see myself out. As I walked toward the door, the board chairman spoke. Ms. Morales, please wait in my office. We may have additional questions once we've had a chance to digest this information. I nodded, feeling suddenly drained. The adrenaline that had carried me through the presentation was fading, leaving behind the raw pain of betrayal and the months of struggle that had followed. In the chairman's office, I sat quietly, watching through the glass walls as the board members confronted Thomas. His gestures became increasingly agitated, his face flushed with desperation. Zachary sat with his head in his hands, the picture of a man watching his career implode. What followed was a corporate execution in slow motion. Thomas was escorted from the building that afternoon, his personal belongings mailed to him later. An internal investigation confirmed everything I'd presented, revealing even more instances of data manipulation across other accounts. The consequences spread like ripples in a pond. Zachary was placed on administrative leave pending investigation of his role in the affair. Two board members who had championed Thomas's promotion resigned quietly. The compliance officer, who had failed to catch the irregularities, was replaced. Most importantly, the clients whose data had been compromised were immediately notified, with Westwood taking extraordinary measures to rebuild trust and implement safeguards against future breaches. 2 weeks later, I received a call from the board chairman himself asking if I would meet with the executive team. Curious, I agreed. I entered the same conference room where I'd exposed Thomas, this time facing a much more subdued group of executives. The chairman cleared his throat. Ms. Morales, we owe you an apology. Our internal investigation confirmed your findings and uncovered additional concerning activities. Thomas has been terminated, and we've reported his actions to the appropriate regulatory bodies. I nodded, waiting for him to continue. We'd like to offer you your position back, with a substantial increase in compensation and authority. The Henderson team specifically requested your return as a condition of maintaining their relationship with us. I let his words hang in the air for a moment before responding. With all due respect, I'm not interested in returning to a company that dismissed me without proper investigation, ignored my track record, and allowed office politics to override sound business judgment. The shocked expressions around the table gave me a moment of satisfaction. I won't deny it. However, I continued, I am launching my own investment advisory firm next month. I'd be open to discussing a consulting arrangement that allows me to work with clients like Henderson while maintaining my independence. The chairman looked relieved at this compromise. We would welcome that arrangement. What terms were you thinking? My attorney will be in touch with specifics, I replied, standing to leave. But I should mention that transparency and ethics will be non-negotiable components of any agreement. The terms we eventually negotiated were better than anything I could have imagined during my years at Westwood. Triple my former salary for part-time consulting work, complete autonomy over my client relationships, and a public statement from the company acknowledging the error in my termination. The official statement read, in part, Westwood Financial acknowledges that the termination of Abigail Morales was based on information that has since been proven fraudulent. Ms. Morales's work and integrity remain beyond reproach, and we deeply regret the circumstances surrounding her departure. That public vindication, more than the financial settlement, helped repair the professional reputation Thomas had worked so hard to destroy. As for Thomas, the consequences of his actions extended far beyond losing his job. The SEC investigation led to substantial fines and a 5-year ban from working in the securities industry. His carefully cultivated reputation was in tatters. No financial firm would touch him with a 10-foot pole. In the months that followed, I learned more about the extent of his deception. Thomas had been playing similar games throughout his career, building himself up by undermining others. Westwood wasn't his first victim, but it would certainly be his last, at least in our industry. The last I heard, he was selling insurance in a small town 3 states away, his Harvard MBA hanging on the wall of a strip mall office. 6 months after my vindication, I received a text from Zachary. You were right. I should have listened. I'm sorry. I never responded. Some apologies come too late. My new firm, Phoenix Financial Advisors, now manages over $200 million in assets, including the Henderson account. Heather from accounting became my first hire, now heading our compliance department. Jordan followed shortly after, bringing 3 major clients with him. We've built a company culture that prioritizes collaboration over competition, transparency over politics, and integrity over expediency. We've implemented safeguards that would have prevented someone like Thomas from manipulating data or circumventing protocols. Most importantly, we've created an environment where everyone's contributions are recognized and valued, where success is measured not by who takes credit, but by the results we achieve for our clients and the growth we foster in each other. The irony isn't lost on me that Thomas's attempted destruction of my career ultimately led to something far more fulfilling than the path I had been on. My role at Westwood, for all its prestige and security, had limitations that my current position does not. Elena jokes that I should send Thomas a thank you card, but that would suggest I've forgiven his actions. I haven't. Not because I hold grudges, but because some betrayals reveal character flaws too fundamental to excuse. Sometimes I wonder if I should thank Thomas. His betrayal forced me to build something I might never have attempted otherwise. But the truth is, his actions were never about me. They were about his own insecurity, his need to climb over others instead of earning his success. The corporate world is full of people like Thomas, who mistake cunning for intelligence and backstabbing for strategy. They might win a few battles through manipulation, but careers aren't built on deception. They're built on competence, integrity, and the trust you earn over time. Last month, a young analyst in our firm discovered an error in one of our major investment models, a mistake that, if left uncorrected, could have cost our clients millions. Instead of hiding it or shifting blame, she brought it directly to my attention. Together, we developed a solution and then contacted every affected client to explain both the error and our corrective measures. Three of those clients increased their investments with us afterward, citing our transparency as the reason. That moment confirmed what I've always believed. Integrity isn't just morally right, it's good business. My name is Abigail Morales, and this is the story of how I lost everything I'd worked for and found something much more valuable in the process: the power of truth, vindication, and the sweetest revenge of all, genuine success.